Okay, this happened a couple days ago. I am just now working up the courage to write it out. I am well versed in the creepypasta game, so I am going to make some meta comments first. 1. Yes, this really happened, who the fuck will believe me? 2. Yes, I plan to go back out and do a follow-up soon, when I work up the courage. But I will be back and update you guys. 3. Yes, I am aware of the creatures I may be dealing with. I will discuss my theories more in depth after the story. 4. No, I don't have any more pics than pic related. Deal with it? Okay, so I was out for a bit of a hike the other day. I was in a woods alone, first mistake right? Well, I enjoy being /out alone. I like to have no other noise but the crunch of my boots and the sounds of the trail. I find serenity in solitude with nature. The problem is that the feeling of isolation can get creepy in the right situation. You start to think about what could happen to you and how long it would take to find you. Solitude is creepy. What's even creepier is when your solitude is broken unexpectedly. I was maybe a fourth of the way through my hike when I saw that there was a side trail that strayed off into the woods. I like following side trails just to see more of the nature, so I generally explore them a bit. I turned down this trail and walked down it for maybe 100 meters when I saw pic related. It was up an incline and hidden in the trees a bit. I was curious, so I snapped pic related and hiked up to take a look. As you can see from the pic, this is some sort of cage and it had a flimsy tin roof that was almost all the way off. The weirdest thing about all this was that this was a somewhat big man-made object way out in a woods. Who put this out here and why? Upon inspection, this thing was a cage with 4 chambers arranged in a square. The 2 facing the trail were empty. I heard rustling coming from the other side. I walked around to look at the other chambers. That's when things got weird. On one of the backside cages there was a piece of lumber screwed over the cage door. On this wood was painted the words, "Medicine Man." I can't exactly explain why, but I got the impression that this was mocking, kind of like when they put, "King of the Jews," over Jesus's head on the cross. Then I noticed that there was something at the back of the cage. It looked like a human buried in leaves. Sure enough, the thing laying back there began to move. A fucking human was back there. I was starting to lose my shit a little bit at this point, and my instinct was to run, but I couldn't force my body to move. It got up and looked at me. It was a Native American. He was real dirty and he was wearing some sort of black war paint. He had no clothes on except some old gym shorts and he was skinny as hell. He started walking towards me. My mind was racing. I glanced at the door of the cage. It was locked with a big heavy lock. As the Indian started shuffling across the cage towards me, he also started speaking. His voice sounded like rustling leaves and I couldn't understand any of the words. They were some native language. The last thing I want to note is that one of his feet was deformed. It was covered in black fur and his nails looked like a dog's toenails. I couldn't move. I was under a spell. This crusty Indian came right up to the wall of the cage and tried to reach through it to grab me, scraping the skin off his fingers as he shoved them through the holes in the cage. He didn't even flinch. That's when I heard a voice behind me say, "He doesn't want your medicine." When this was said, the man in the cage recoiled and I snapped out of my trance. I turned to see who was behind me. It was 2 people. A clean-looking native and a pale white man in a suit. Imagine Doug from House of Cards, except he's wearing a black suit, black fedora, and he has no hair. This guy looked weird. The suit man looked at me and said, "It appears as if you've tumbled into an odd circumstance. You may consider it advantageous to skedaddle." This guy talked fucking weird, and everything he said was monotone. I took this opportunity to run for my life. When I was down the trail away, I could hear the caged man screaming. Against my better judgment, I snuck back to peek at the cage. I could see the clean native using a cattle prod to shock the caged man, and the suit man just stood watching. After a minute of watching, the suited fucker turned and looked straight at me and said, "Your breath is loud, and has a particular cadence. Leave here now. When he said this, I couldn't see his mouth moving and it sounded like he was right next to me. I almost pissed my pants, so I ran for it again. This time I really ran. I got in my truck and drove home as fast as I could. I haven't left my house since. I live out in the country. This was all a couple days ago. There has been a shitload of coyote howling at night. I am afraid to go outside, but I am planning to nut up and go back to the cage soon. I have had a few days to think about what happened. I think the man in the cage was a skinwalker. It seems to fit the lore. The suit man fits descriptions of men in black, but I haven't ever heard of them dealing with skinwalkers. What he was doing torturing that thing instead of just killing it is a mystery to me. I read up on some skinwalker lore and I feel prepared to face that thing. I don't think it's right to leave it caged and tortured, so I'm taking some bolt cutters and I'm going back. If you guys have any info on any of this, it would be greatly appreciated. I'll try to update after I have gone back. Oh, and I only have one picture because I took several, but every pic I took after pic related was distorted and blurry. Of course.
That is absolutely fucked if true, but do not release it. The last thing you want is a skinwalker on your ass. Have you gone since?
I haven't been back out to see it yet. Partially because I'm a pussy and partially because work. Maybe this Thursday.
I suggest you take some friends and some firearms. Maybe a dog even. Film it and tell us how it went. I'll be looking forward to hearing about this.
Okay, I made it back out to the skinwalker cage. Time for an update. So when I went back, the cage was still there, but no one was around. I took some pics though, and I'm convinced what I saw last time was real. This is the cell that held the skinwalker. The lock has been removed, so I could look inside. The cell next to it was locked with apparently no one inside. Weird. Also, the lock in the next door cell was shiny and new even though the cage is rusted out. I will show you a pic of the floor of the cage next. What I found surprised me. Damn picture was posted sideways. So I looked on the inside of the skinwalker cage, and there's fucking bedding on the ground. I didn't notice it the first time, probably because the skinwalker was buried under leaves. This proves someone's been staying in it. Obviously it could be some hobo, but I am not anywhere near civilization and I have never seen any other evidence of hobos. This hole in the cage is where the skinwalker was sticking his hands through the cage and ripping his skin off in the process. It has been a rainy week, but you can see the hole still has some blood stainage. Okay, so that was all the evidence I had, the bedding and the hole. I'm pretty spooked right now because I know I wasn't dreaming. I heard every single rustle in the underbrush as I walked out of there, and now I'm holed up in my house considering buying a gun. This last pic is another curiosity I found not far from the cage that I didn't see the first time. Obviously this trailer has been there for a long time, but I wonder if that was how they got the cage out there in the first place. Full disclosure, I haven't posted all my pics. I have a few pics left that just show the cage, in case I ever have to prove that I'm the same guy who posted everything else.
Was there any sort of path along which the trailer might have come you could follow for more clues?
No path from the trailer. It has saplings growing through the middle of it, so it hasn't moved in a while. There are several little trails in the area. I followed most of them, didn't find much. There was a lot of the tin roof material from the cage all over and pretty far from the cage and lots of tin cans and other food trash.